Welcome to the video. My name's Whitby and I'm your host. Konnichiwa, watashi wa Raymond Whitby desu. Dozo yoroshiku. In this video we're going to be wood turning samurai warriors. We're using negative space art and Cuban mahogany. So this is a beautiful piece of wood that was donated into the charity. I think this is a worthy project to use it on. The procedure for constructing such a project has been repeated in previous videos, so please click on the link in the top right corner of the screen or go down to the description below. Essentially, it's to take the image and to use PVA glue to glue it onto the wooden substrate. And then once dried very carefully using the bandsaw and a scroll saw, it's to be as faithful as possible in etching out the shapes. There is a lot of intricate cuts that need to be made for this particular project, and I've decided not to show you every moment of every cut, so this is just an acceleration of the process. In two previous videos I have tried a silhouette and also a stencil art images, which has seemed to have worked okay. So this is trying negative space to see if the resin can come alive using the wood within a negative space format. These kanji characters were taken from an internet search, and I'm just hoping that it was accurate and actually does mean samurai and not something naughty. Question: if you were going to do a project like this, what kind of characters or images would you actually put into the resin? And please let me know in the comments below. There are quite a few tool marks on each piece, so it's best to go through with some sanding paper to reduce the amount of tool marks present. But you have to be careful. A lot of these cuts leave the wood in a very delicate thickness, so you must be careful, otherwise things start to break. I had to cut the katana and the hand away from the body and then profile both just to try to get them to curve. Otherwise it just wouldn't fit in the pot that I had at the time. I think it would have been fine had I had a bigger pot, and then I should have probably used a lot more of the wood to try and put in new characters just to fill in the space. Alas, I didn't have a thick enough piece of the mahogany to be able to profile it in one single piece. A bit of hot glue was required for the central column, and you can see that I've cut a series of channels into it. This is just to help any air bubbles that are trapped to escape once the resin is poured. A couple of drops of Starbond CA glue is all that's required to fix the characters to the central column, and then just to reassemble any other parts to it. Decided to use some hot glue for the positioning of the kanji letters, just a little bit more working time than the CA glue. If there were more intricate parts to the negative space image, then I'd probably recommend gluing them to a flat substrate as best as possible, and then gluing that onto the central column. And I kind of chickened out of using some of the more fragmented negative space images. Too many bits and pieces to cut. Bit of a health and safety issue, but also the reassembly would have been a total nightmare. Straight red resin dye was used for this project, possibly just to match the rising sun on the Japanese flag, and a tiny touch of black mica powder just to give it a bit more depth within the coloration. definitely use a block to hold the entire piece down, otherwise it would float up when the resin's curing. It took a lot more effort to try and get that out of the pot, but thankfully I was using a mold release agent prior to placing anything inside the pot. Once out, straight onto the lathe, and the first task is to create a tenon and get it into some jaws. When working on a project that has a lot of resin, I tend to favour the carbide tools. They just leave a much better finish than some of the traditional tools. Now I do know some creators and wood turners that have been able to use traditional turning tools quite effectively, but I find that they tend to chatter or they tend to chip out the resin if you're not careful enough, possibly because my tools aren't sharp enough. I had enough mahogany to provide a rim for the project, so decided to get a flat top and then using some epoxy resin glue to get the piece of mahogany glued on, and then just waited a number of hours for that to harden before even touching it on the lathe. I wanted to be absolutely sure that the thing was rock solid and not going to come off as soon as I touched it with a tool. Part of wood turning any resin project is of course creating the streamers, continuous ribbons of resin that come off the project, uninterrupted by wood. Patience is required when turning the resin project just to get down to exposing the wood that is contained within. It does then constrain the overall profile of your final project depending on the pot that you've used, as well as the central column and the angle in which the pieces are attached. I did spend a lot more time on the sanding part before proceeding to the next stages, such as sealing. So I took it up to 240 grit, applied the sanding sealer, and then back on with the 240 grit, and then went upwards. I also used Yorkshire grit and a bit of polishing paste to help finish off the outside before turning to the inside. Once the outside's complete, then it's time to tackle the hollowing stage. So it's to take off as much of the rim wood as necessary, and then start the drilling process. Must be careful when hollowing the projects on the lathe, just in case the whole piece decides to dismount. With projects this small, you can get away with it without too many difficulties, but I decided that I would actually build my own steady rest. Always exercise a lot of patience when hollowing out, or in fact any kind of work on the lathe. Rushing it does lead to very poor performance, but also can lead to disasters in the project as well. Whatever the treatment processes you've used to help finish the outside, you've got to then repeat for the inside. So it's to use the same kind of grit steps for sanding, then using the sanding sealer, and then your Yorkshire grit and polishing paste. Into the final stages to get it into the remounting jaws, and now we can take off the base tenon. Use the same treatment process for the outside, the hollowing, and now for the base. Sanding, sealer, Yorkshire grit, and a bit of polishing paste was necessary. And then it's finished. Woodturning samurai warriors. I really do think that the negative space images really help to come alive with the resin project. So I'm very happy with this piece and how it's turned out. The only downside being that I had to cut the katana and the hand and then remount so it got the curvature. Please let me know what you think of the project. Write them down in the comments below if you liked it. Please click on like, subscribe if you would, and please do share. Thanks so much for watching.